Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat. The show is about to start. Hey guys, what's up? This is Phoebe.
Hey, this is Mike.
This is episode number 47 of the Mike and Phoebe Show. And today we have an in-studio guest. This is Jeremiah Raxter. He is an attorney and counselor at law out of Menifee. And Jeremiah is also a fellow Paris Valley Chamber of Commerce member. Welcome, Jeremiah.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're so excited to have you in studio here. Now, we connected a few months ago. You did our podcast for the HR Forum and talking about labor laws with the Chamber of Commerce in Paris. So we're happy to have you actually in studio today.
Yeah, this time you invited me to the actual studio. I like it.
Yes.
Nice.
It's so much more a different feel. You know, we get to see our faces, our body language. So it's a lot more lively and it's a lot more of a connection that we can have on the podcast.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, face to face.
That's right.
Except I look better on Zoom, with the filters, but
I think we all do.
Too funny. Now, today's topic, Jeremiah wanted to talk to us about his expertise in specialized litigation concerning child abuse and assault. So today's podcast is focusing on the available remedies for victims of such crimes. And Jeremiah shares with us that he is deeply passionate about this topic, and he is eager to shed light on the support and assistance options accessible to victims. So this is going to be a really good informational podcast. So I'm glad that you're here to talk to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come and talk to you about this. This is a very serious subject, but it's a subject that we need to get out there. I want victims and family members, and if someone, a loved one has heaven forbid went through something like this, you need to know what is available out there. What are some remedies? Because we all know that the basic one, we call the police and the police come in and hopefully arrest the perpetrator and they go to jail. But, what can we do from a civil side? And so I just really appreciate this is a hard subject. And so I really appreciate you letting me come here and talk to you about this.
Absolutely. And, not only are we talking about a difficult topic, which is important to discuss and put it out there, but you are providing the assistance for that. So it's good for people to listen. Even you may or may not know someone who was a victim of abuse, domestic abuse, assault. But even if you may or may not know, but if you hear about it, you can talk to people. Hey, I listened to a podcast with this lawyer. His name's Jeremiah Raxter. Let's listen to that. What kind of feedback can we get? So it's good that we're here today. Now, a couple of questions that you sent over. Now, what if someone was sexually abused as a child, but they're an adult? Can they still seek legal help? Is there a statute of limitations of some sort?
There is. There is a statute of limitations, but we've really opened that up in California. And because, when you're a child and heaven forbid you've been sexually assaulted or abused, and we don't expect the child to do, that's what your parents are for. And that's where, the adults in your life are supposed to protect you and take care of you. But if you were assaulted as a child, you have all the way until the age of 40 to file a claim against that from a civil side, or within 5 years of discovering the psychological injury or the illness occurring from that, whichever is later though. So 40 is the quote unquote magic age. So I have a tendency, a lot of my clients that come in for this particular type of cause of action, a lot of them, because, this is hard to go through and you have to relive it. And a lot of people don't want to open up those wounds. So I get a lot of clients that'll come to me, at 39, or at 38 and say, okay, I know the time's nearing, let's talk about it. So you have until the age of 40. Or like I said, within those 5 years. But again, whichever is later. So, and a lot of that has changed recently. So there are a lot of people that thought, because the old statute of limitations was much shorter, but because of the Me Too movement and some of this other movements, we in California have come back and said, no, we want to give victims more time. They deserve justice. So let's not, cut them off at the pass. Let's let them have the ability to go in and try to recover whatever damages they can from the abuser. So So I'm giving you the lawyer answer. I'm giving I'm giving you a really long-winded answer to your question. So yes, if you're abused as a child, even though you're an adult and it's been years, as long as you're within, that time frame, you're 40 years or less, or within 5 years of learning about it, whichever's later.
So what was the age before 40?
So before that, it was based on the timing. Meaning it was similar to, it wasn't based on age at all. It was based on, you turn 18, you only have so many years to file it. So we've changed that now and really broadened that.
Okay.
And it's really helped. I can think of numerous cases that within the last few years, someone has come to me and said, hey, I know I couldn't do something about it before under the new or the old law, but now under the new law, I want to do something, and I'm either going to turn 40 or, I still got a few years. So let's, do something. And what I do from the civil side, and because I'm a civil attorney, meaning I don't work for the district attorney, and not to take anything away from that. If you've been sexually assaulted, you've been abused, please call the police. Please deal with that. Sometimes that doesn't happen because, like we just talked about, in your 30s, and this abuse took place when you were a child, or you were a teenager. You should still call the police. The first question I ask when a client comes in and talks to me about this is, have you talked to law enforcement? And most of the time they have, but sometimes they haven't. They said, no, I either don't want to do that, or I didn't know if I could do that because it's been 20 years or it's been 15 years. And we have that conversation. I'm a big fan, meaning, I'm a big advocate that we should do both. Sometimes we have to strategically think about it. Do we do the civil side first and then we do the criminal side? Do we want to involve the criminal side before we do our side? And that's case by case. And it's really, we have to be strategic about it in some ways. But my side is I don't get to throw people in jail. God, I wish I could. If I had that power, I have a list.
Right. I know.
I don't get to do that. What I get to do from a civil side is I seek legal remedies. And this is where some people, I think sometimes kind of get a little, maybe not nervous, or if you've never been assaulted, or, you're looking from the outside, they go, oh, great. Now that, all they're out is for the money, they're seeking money. And yes, that's my job, is to go recover funds for the victim. But it's not about money. You ask any victim out there, there is never amount of money that makes this right. And it'll never make it okay. Right. It is not about the money. What it is about, though, is people that have suffered abuse, sexual abuse, especially depending on what age they were and how traumatic it was, there are job opportunities they didn't get because there's those days you just couldn't get out of bed. Right. There are places that, situations they couldn't put themselves in because they weren't comfortable being around, lots of men. Right. Or there's, therapy that they have to go to. There's counseling. Sometimes, people are able to, suppress those feelings and they come out different ways. Mm-hmm. And that might have affected lots of things in your life. And, I have some of my clients that come to me, that are in their 30s and never had counseling, never had, therapy. And for whatever reason, they either never did it, couldn't afford it, didn't think, they needed it, So yes, at the end of the day, a civil attorney is going to say, we want X dollars. But those dollars, how we calculate that is, okay, what are we going to do? What do we need to fix? The whole idea of the justice system, if there is such a thing, is to make someone whole. Mm-hmm. So they suffered this abuse, they suffered this damage. What do we do to make them whole? So we look at that, and that's some of the conversations we have is, do you need counseling? Do you need therapy? Do you, did you lose job opportunities? So we put a number to that. It is what it is. It comes down to that, and then that's where sometimes we have to be strategic, because do we want to do that before we involve the district attorney? I have a really good relationship. Sometimes I get involved after the district attorney gets involved, which is great. because then another role I can play is I help isolate that victim. Meaning, I have a case right now that's going on that the other side, the perpetrator, because of course they have an attorney and they're trying to do their job. So they're trying to, get the victim to testify and do different things. Well, the district attorney only has so much power. And instead of having, all the communication now to my client goes through me, I'm able to isolate them. And, through the district attorney, they have a victim advocate, and, the district attorneys, the deputies, at least in Riverside County, that are assigned are great. I have a good, close working relationship with them, and they'll communicate with me, and we'll work together because we're looking for the same thing. We've got the same bad guy in common,
Right.
And I have, different remedies than they have. They get to put them in jail, and, maybe we go and try to get the money that this victim deserves to pay for therapy and pay for all the stuff they deserve. Maybe we do that before they spend all their money on a criminal defense attorney, So maybe we have to be strategic about it in that case. So that's my role. So yeah, when you look at it from the outside, and I get a little defensive about this because, every once in a while somebody will say, well, all you do is you go after money. Well, yeah, that's what life is about. Meaning that's all there is left.
Yeah.
The district attorney will put them in jail. We want them to do their job, but that victim has suffered. So there's never a dollar amount. I have never yet had a victim and say, if you give me this dollar amount, everything's good. It's not about money, except that's what we come down to.
Right.
And we have to factor in, what is that therapy going to cost? What is that? I have clients that had a hard time keeping a job because, they didn't want to be around men. And they didn't feel safe, for a long time. So we have to fix that. And again, I'm giving you those long-winded lawyer answers.
Right.
But one thing I do differently, and maybe not, completely different than some lawyers that do this, is I've learned over the years. So every day, meaning, 90% of the day, I'm a probate litigation attorney. I represent, the public administrator, and I do, if you come into my office, I do a lot of, estate planning and all that stuff. My specialized litigation is wrongful death and sexual assault. Those are the only two areas I really do. And because it's passionate for me, I've had family members that, and close friends that have suffered, and that's what got me into it. In law school many, many, many years ago, I worked for the Center Against Sexual Assault. I was their general attorney. I've done lots of things with sexual assault because to me, it's just such a disgusting thing that happens in our society that I want to go after those bad people, and I'm saying it as bad people because we're on a podcast. I don't know who's going to listen.
Right.
But I have other words I'd like to use.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And so to me, it's really passionate to just like the police. And to me, someone who abuses a child or sexually assaults someone is nothing more than a bully.
Right.
Oh.
So in all honesty, I don't care if we sue them and they live in a box at the end of it. That's my job,
True.
I have a case right now that I'm representing a client, and that other attorney had the gall the other day to call me and say, well, we want to depose your client. We want this, we want that. And I said, good luck, go ahead. I like that fight. There's a lot of litigation I don't like to do. I will never be the slip and fall attorney, and that's just not me, but I'll go toe to toe with anybody defending an abuser. Let's go fight that fight. And my clients that I've helped in these type of cases are usually the best clients because they're so happy to have an advocate, and I love working with them. And I got sidetracked, but one of the things what I wanted to say is one of the things that maybe makes me different than some other attorneys that do this is I make all my clients, and make's not the right word, but I have all my clients talk to a psychologist or a therapist. Some of it is required depending on, the age of the victim and, depending on the type of case, it may be required that we have to do it. We have to get a therapist to say if this was childhood abuse. But even if it's not required, I have them talk to someone. We pay for that. I front the cost for that, because a lot of times that's the first time they've talked to someone.
Right.
And it's just a one time, I use this one therapist or counselor that's great. In fact, used to be an attorney, stopped being an attorney, went back to school, and got their doctorate degree. And they do it over Zoom, so it's real comfortable. And at their, because I have clients that are all in different states. It occurred in California, but now they have moved to Arizona, they moved to other states. So we do it over Zoom. I just think that's worthwhile, because I have never, and it's hard to do that.
Right.
And sometimes I have clients that say, well, I've never talked to anybody. I'd rather just tell you because I want to tell it once.
Yeah.
And I say, no, you really need to talk to someone professional.
Right.
I'm a professional lawyer, and I'm a really good lawyer, but I am not a good therapist. That's just not my role. And you wouldn't want me to be the therapist. So go talk to someone that has that training. And a lot of times, I get a report from them, and they and they'll tell them stuff that, and it's not that they wouldn't tell me, it's just they didn't think of it,
right.
And he knows the right questions to ask and all that stuff. And I just think that's really important. I approach these type of cases, I think, and it's taken years, I've learned each case, I learn a little bit more on how, to have the right empathy and, have the right, because again, I'm the lawyer, I'm not a counselor. So,
right.
And we've learned, over the years how to do it. And it makes sense, I think, to talk to. And then I have a lot of clients, I would say a good percentage of clients go, well, I really thank you, Jeremiah, for pushing me to go talk to this counselor. It's now I'm going to go find my own, I'm going to go find one in my town, because it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be.
Right.
I've had these feelings for all these years, and you get really good at hiding those feelings.
Yeah.
And you get really good at, it's almost like a callus. You get this callus over them. And once you kind of open that up, I have a lot of times people go, just thank you for pushing me to do it. It's a lot easier now. I want to go talk to someone.
Yeah. And you're able to provide assistance in giving closure too, for such a traumatic situation that's happened. Because I've had friends and people that I know that have also been through abuse, and you want to help them, but just by listening to them, but that's all that I can do, because I'm definitely not a therapist, but that's not even scratching the surface to providing the help that they need. So absolutely going to a professional counselor, therapist will help them in securing that closure that they need to move on and to heal from the traumatic situations. And I absolutely agree with you. It is very important to do that. Yeah. You have a good rapport in your body language. You have a good voice that you're very calming too. You don't seem intimidating in like a scary lawyer kind of a way, that you're not gonna, to me, you're not intimidating in that way. You're more of a human being. I can easily connect with you as a human being. So let's say if I was a victim and let's say we were meeting, I wouldn't be as intimidated once I get to know you, once I feel comfortable, so I can imagine as a victim talking to you about a case, they wouldn't feel as intimidated once they see you and, get to talk to you. So I like that you have a good human connection that you build with them. Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, I think that's probably the best compliment I can get.
Oh, there you go.
I'll take it. You can't see me because we're on a podcast, but I wore a suit jacket today, but I literally had to dust it off to bring it here, because if you're wanting a 3-piece suit lawyer, I'm not your guy. I wear suits because I go to court and I have to. It's actually a court rule. Yeah. In my next life, I'm going to be a lawyer in Hawaii, because they don't have to wear suits in Hawaii.
Shorts and t-shirt.
Yeah, they really do. They get to wear Hawaiian shirts in Hawaii.
Dang.
We don't get away with that in California, even though it's 120 degrees in the summer. Sure. I was a lawyer later in life. I was not, I didn't grow up and want to be a lawyer. I wanted to be in law enforcement. I worked in law enforcement before I went to law school. I did some other jobs, and, I did like most of us. I started in fast food, worked my way through. So I've lived a lot of lives. I've been a lawyer now for a long time, but I had to work with lawyers before I became a lawyer. And in all honesty, I didn't like a lot of them. Because they get that intimidation,
Right.
and, there's a part of me that if you walk into a lawyer's office, and I had a client one time, we went to I'm getting sidetracked, but we went to this office one time to do a deposition, and the client turned me, and a really good client, and said, "Why doesn't your office look like this? They have granite countertops." It was beautiful, and it was a beautiful office. And I said, "You know who pays for that, right? It's not him, it's his clients, And I said, if you want to, I'll bill you a lot more if you want to come to a nicer office." And then he's like, "Yeah, you're right. I don't mind." And your office is great. And I've been there. I've been a client, and I don't know. We're all just doing a job,
Right.
And if you want a 3-piece suit guy, I'll give you some names. I'm not that guy. I am. I want to be your advocate. I think the biggest thing that I can do, or the best thing I can do as a lawyer, is to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't always mean you're going to like it, and that's in everything we do, not just sexual assault victims, but anything I do as a lawyer, I'm going to tell you the truth. Now, at the end of the day, the client's the client. They're gonna do what they want to do, and my job is to advocate for them. But I'm going to tell them, look, this is how the court's going to look at it. This is how it's going to be viewed. And I know you want X, but the best thing for you is to do this other thing. Because I'm supposed to be, and that goes back to why I have everybody talk to a therapist or a counselor. I'm supposed to be unemotional. It's hard to do that in these type of cases because, like I said, I'll go toe to toe with those lawyers, and I almost love that fight because I feel like I'm really fighting for the right here. But at the same time, I have to disconnect myself from the emotions and approach my client and say, look, this is the story. I had a case one time, a sexual assault case that we pursued civil remedies. It was for a childhood sexual abuse. And we, got all the way to court. And the other side said, look, I don't have a whole lot of money, but when I die, you can have the house, you can have all this stuff. And we had to really think about that because there was other children that were biological children that did not get abused, and my client was a stepchild. And so we had to sit there and go, do we want to pursue this and have a judgment, a money judgment? Because that's what we're going after. Or is it better to have a conversation of, look, we can get, what's that old saying? A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush,
Yes, yes.
And so we have to sit there and say, look, if we can do this, we can put it in your pocket today. That can help you pay for your counseling. That can help, whatever, put in your retirement account. That could do whatever we can do, and that's my job, is to sit there and take the emotion out and say, okay, let's think about this. Now, that doesn't mean I don't get to be passionate all the way to that point. I'm going to fight that fight, and I'm going to go after the bad guy or bad girl, or bad entity. Sometimes, we have to make strategic decisions. There are cases that, heaven forbid, if you were sexually assaulted by a teacher or you were sexually assaulted by a, scoutmaster or something else, yes, of course, we go after the bad guy, but maybe there's an entity that allowed this to happen.
Right.
True.
And so we have to make those decisions, and that's my job, is to sit there and have that conversation.
So talking about another entity, then, what if you were abused by a member of an organization like a church or a youth group? Who is responsible? Obviously the person, the perpetrator, but what about the entity? How does that work?
So the entity might be liable as well. And so one of my jobs as the advocate is to link those connections if there are any. So if, let's say, the church or the Boy Scout troop or the school or whatever knew that there was a problem and didn't do anything, then they could be found liable. If they, I had a case one time that they hired there was a teacher that was hired that had been fired from another district already for sexual assault. And they just didn't do a background check well enough. So they could be found liable. It could be, sometimes it's as simple as, yep, the church knew about it, so they moved that youth minister to somebody, to a different church. Well, if they knew about it and didn't do anything to protect, and to me, there's a lot of things I get really passionate about and I get angry about. That to me angers me more than some other things, because of course the bad person is just doing bad things. Of course they're a perpetrator. They should go to jail, and all the bad things that filters down from that should happen. But if there's other adult that knew about it and didn't do anything to protect, to me, that's almost a worse thing, because they had the power to stop that. And so that's why we have those conversations, with our clients and say, look, I know you're not mad at the Boy Scouts. You're not mad at the church, because maybe the church had great things. Maybe they provided, other than, this one bad person, some great things in your life. But if they knew about it and didn't do anything to protect you, that's a liability. And then that's something they should be held liable for. And we have that conversation. Sometimes I have clients that say, nope, I don't want to go after the entity, but they are under the law. If they knew about it, didn't stop it, there was a connection, and some of this we learn as the case progresses. Sometimes we start with one defendant because we know who the bad person is, the bad, lady or gentleman. But then as the case goes on, that's part of the lawsuit is we learn, oh, wait, this other person knew about it too and didn't do anything, and so then we add them. So
passive. It's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. And that's really sad that people do that. But, there's so many more questions that I have here that I would like to ask.
Go ahead.
It's so important to discuss that and create a conversation about it too. And one thing that I've seen a lot of happening, especially online, the day and age of social media, everything's out in the open. So what can you do if an ex posts pictures of you online that you took together? Obviously that was in the past, but now they're using that for a negative and abuse situation. How can you address that? So
that's a really good question, in the fact that happens more and more. Because we all know what sexual assault is. I don't need to describe that to any of your listeners. We all know what sexual assault is or sexual abuse is. What you're asking about is what we call revenge porn. It's kind of the slang term for it, and it's actually in the law. It's called revenge porn. So, the example is this, and this is kind of the, I use this expression, but it's like the law school example. This is a textbook example. You have a couple. It could be, unmarried. It could just be a boyfriend, girlfriend. It could be even just somebody you met for the night. You consensually did whatever you did. And then maybe we took pictures, or, I dated, I've been married a long time. So it seems pretty normal now for people to send pictures to each other. We didn't have cell phones when I was dating.
That was a little harder back then.
Yeah. Plus, I didn't have the body confidence to probably pull that off anyway. So I don't think it's unusual for that. I mean, that's pretty normal now. So, maybe it's consensual. You sent a picture to someone, you took some pictures together, whatever. But then whatever happens, you break up, they get mad at you, whatever. What happens is then they post that picture. They send it to their friends. There's cases that they'll send it to all, if you're still in school or you're in college, they'll send it to the group chat to, the friends to embarrass you or whatever else. And that's why we call it revenge porn. They're doing it to anger you. They're doing it to embarrass you. And there's, California came out with a law just for that. It's actual Civil Code 1708.85 if you're on Trivia Pursuit and you want to look it up. But, and it's one of the few times you'll see revenge porn in the Civil Code. But there's laws against that, and it's criminal. It's a criminal act. So again, it's a lot of what we're talking about has two facets. Has the criminal side, which is the district attorney, that's the police, and then you have the civil side. So I would come in on the civil side. There are statutory damages, anywhere from, $5,000 to $30,000 that I don't have to prove. I don't have to prove it caused you damage. The law just says, depending on, the photo and, how they post it, that we just are assuming you're going to be embarrassed enough. And, it might damage your reputation, because if it's social media, they're sending it to friends, everybody talks, we all think we're in this big, massive world, but it's a really small world. How many times you go to the store and you're like, oh, this person? So do I.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden that reputation gets out there, so the law kind of said, if I can prove damages, if I can prove you lost a job because of it, or there's been cases that a teacher loses their job because, somebody now sends it to the school board, and so the photo itself doesn't have to be, it can also work. I guess what I'm going to sidetrack, because it could be a photo you didn't know about. But it also could be a photo that you consented to. You took, you were having a good relationship and you did this, you were being intimate with your partner, or you sent an intimate picture to your partner. So it doesn't have to be a photo you didn't know about. It could be a photo you took willingly. But if now it's being used against you and it's being published, there's things we can do about that. And the law is on point. It's not something we have to be creative. The law a couple years ago came out and said, we know this is happening, so we're going to make a code section just for this.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome that at least we know that the law is on the victim's side, that they want to provide the assistance and they want to provide the help for that. So that's really good that you're bringing that up.
Yeah.
Well, Jeremiah, we had so much knowledge that we want to share and I'd like to get from you, but I know we're kind of short on time. Obviously, we appreciate the time that you're taking to talk to us. Hopefully we can continue this as a series, because I know there's so much more that you can share as information to the public. So this is Jeremiah Raxter. He is the attorney and counselor at law out of Menifee. If you want to contact Jeremiah's office, you can contact him at 951-226-5294. Again, this is Jeremiah Raxter, the attorney and counselor at law. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Mike and Phebe Show on Alternative Twist Radio. If you missed any past episodes, just search the Mike and Phebe Show or Alternative Twist Radio on any major podcast app.